I want to talk about the role of a moral philosopher. A moral philosopher is a person who tries to understand the moral structure of reality. He tries to give an account of the moral relations of things, an account which weaves them together into a stable system. The moral philosopher tries to make sense of morality. He tries to discover a moral order to the universe. Now I think that some moral philosophers have tried too hard to know the moral order of the universe in advance. You see, I am an empiricist, through and through. There can be no final truth in ethics, any more than there can be in science, until all of us have had our experiences and said what we have to say. Let me try to explain this in more detail. I had better start by telling you what I think is the foundation of morality. There is no such thing as a moral truth in a world made of only matter. Morality requires consciousness to exist. Moral qualities, like good or bad, only exist in a mind which feels them. Nothing can be good or right except so far as some consciousness feels it to be good or thinks it to be right. So the perspective, the wishes, of some sentient being, are necessary for moral truths. They are also sufficient. Take any wish, however small, which any sentient creature may make. Should it not, for its own sake alone, be satisfied? Now moral values are one thing, and moral obligations are another. A value by itself does not mean much to me, unless it happens to be my own value. But an obligation is different. Even if a value is not my own, if I have an obligation to support it, I must support it. Now I think that what makes the difference between a value and an obligation is simply a demand. If I wish for something and also demand that someone help me achieve it, then he is obligated to do it. The problem, of course, is that we all want different things, and we make different demands of one another, and so there are many different things that are obligatory. Some of these obligations are consistent, but many are not. Even if we knew about all our obligations and it were in our power to meet each of them individually, we could not meet all of them, so we are condemned as breakers of the moral law, no matter what we do. The situation is bad. What are we to do? There is some hope. Among all the possible combinations of obligations, one of them must be the biggest group of consistent obligations. Remember that the task of the moral philosopher is to see the moral world as consistent and unified, to explain the moral universe as a coherent system. This is currently impossible because our demands are distinct and sometimes conflict. So the task of the moral philosopher is to find the largest set of consistent obligations, the largest set of consistent ideals. Finding the best possible combination of obligations requires two things. The first thing it requires is commitment and tireless labor on the part of the moral philosopher. Finding this set of ideals will take lots of work and creativity. Actually, it takes politics. The task of the moral philosopher is to mediate between existing ideals and obligations, trying to build them together into as large and consistent a frame as may be made of them. Some ideals and obligations will have to be sacrificed along the way. The ones that are too inconsistent with too many other ideals. And many people will have to be persuaded to take up other people, and the ideals of other people, as their own ideals. In short, the moral philosopher is also a political philosopher. His job is not to sit in the ivory tower and speculate on the dreamy perfections he imagines the moral law to have. His job is to get down in the gritty world of workaday practicality, and find a way to make different people's competing ideals fit together. We have to work with what we have, with the disordered and contradicting moral obligations that presently exist in the world. We have to build them up into something better, but all of our work is in vain if we work alone, and without hope. Finding the best possible combination of obligations requires something else. It requires God. Only divine wisdom could know what obligations are present in the world we are working towards. God knows what these obligations are, and God is not without some power. I do not believe in an omnipotent God, but I believe in a God who can help us. As we work towards a more consistent set of obligations, God can nudge us in the right direction. But if we want to know what perfect system of obligations, what moral universe, we are actually working towards, God is not so useful. We don't know what these obligations actually are, so for now a living God who knows what they are does nothing to help us also know. But the idea of a God who knows and cares inspires us to keep working towards it. In short, the moral philosopher must hope that God can lead us out of this tangle of obligations in which we find ourselves. We must think, and we must work, and we must hope, and we must pray for the victory of the religious cause.